Dave Gleason, welcome to the Strong Female Athlete podcast.
Thank you. I am honored to be on here again with you. So let's just dig in. I'm always excited about the topics that you pick for us to talk about, and this one is definitely a hot spot.
Yeah, I feel every time I text you and I'm like, do you want to talk about this? And we just hop on and we just go.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we are talking about playing time today. It's a very sensitive topic, which I totally get because all female athletes want to be out there. Parents want to see their daughters out there. And when that playing time is taken away or their girl isn't a starter like she once was, it can be very confusing and disorienting. And I think on the parent end, they don't want to be that overbearing parent that goes to the coach. But let's maybe discuss what to do step by step if a parent sees their daughter starting to not get as many minutes. Is there anything parents can do or not do initially?
What I want to talk about right away, Erica, is well, two things: appreciate and encourage. Right? It's very easy, and put it in context, I was a soccer dad, not just a soccer coach and a performance coach. And there were ebbs and flows of playing time for my two boys. And now with my stepsons, it's the same thing. But our role, right, is to appreciate where they are, what their role is on that team, appreciate their effort, their commitment, and focus on those things as well as encourage them to continue to push, to continue to look at themselves inwardly. What can I do better? Uh, and, what can I do to advocate for myself as much as possible? Because it's very easy to go in the other direction, right? And even if you're not speaking directly with your son or daughter, to speak with your spouse or other parents, and they hear everything. So when you start talking about it's political and this girl has no business starting above my daughter, and that negativity only adds to the pressure that your child is feeling, and it doesn't help the situation at all. So I'll open it up to you as well. My starting point with parents is always appreciate and encourage.
I really like that. And I think you make a good point that the being jealous or crap talking other players on the team who are starting, like,
Mhm.
yes, we get you're frustrated, but that's not setting a good example for your daughter. And it kind of gets to a point where you need to take action, whether it's maybe seeing if your daughter has some weaknesses compared to the other girls on the team as to why that playing time was diminished a little bit, or let some time transpire and see if she can earn that position back. And if she doesn't, then maybe ask the coach. And it doesn't need to come off in a combative or aggressive way. It can just be a quick email and be, hey, coach, thank you so much for everything you've done for my daughter and the team. She wants to continue to get better and work on her skills and get playing time. What are some things she can work on? Or maybe even have the girl have that conversation with the coach and teach her how to ask those questions and advocate for herself and have these conversations. So I think that there can come a point where something can be said, because otherwise the girl will never know why the playing time was decreased if no one asks.
Right. I'm so glad that you said that. And before I gave you the chance to respond, I was already thinking in my head about, let's be real. There are unfortunately too many times when playing time gets diminished. And I think that can be even more difficult than I've always been a bench player. But I seem to be stuck there because in that case, then you can work with like people like us and you can work with the coaching staff. And if that particular player has a lot of grit and perseverance, I mean, how many stories could we talk about with professional athletes that didn't make their high school team at all as a sophomore and became the greatest ever? Or, they really struggled and they didn't come on in terms of more minutes until senior year in high school or even in college. So again, when your minutes are diminished, you were a starter, and now all of a sudden you're not, and your minutes are going down, and there's no explanation. I agree with you, parents and players. That's unfair. One of the things, in my opinion, a great coach needs to do is communicate all the time with their players. That said, I love what Erica just said. I love what you just said, Erica, because like I think if you always start with yourself as a parent or a player, when you do reach out to the coach, say, hey, my son or daughter, or hey, I really want to contribute to this team. What can I do better? What can I do more? Because then that starts a conversation. When it's just, why isn't my daughter playing as much anymore? Coaches are human beings and they make mistakes all the time, but they also have the ability to shut down and say, I just can't deal with this. And then they make decisions that either aren't in the best interest of the team, or maybe your son or daughter, maybe there's a reason that they just haven't communicated yet. And if they shut down enough, playing time could get worse. And we don't want that either because Erica, you and I have talked about this in the past as well. Because what does that turn into? Okay, we're going to jump clubs.
Mm.
Okay, and we're not happy with this club either because now you have to break into that team and earn your playing time. We're going to jump clubs again. And I think so. I'm just really happy that you responded in the way that you did because that's what I also encourage parents and players to do is take the lead and make that communication with your coach. Ask them, what can I do better? I was a starter. They know that. Or I was getting, 30 to 35 minutes a game, and now it seems like 10. Is it something that I'm doing? Start that conversation. I think that is so important. I want to put this in context as well. I also understand that if we're talking about club soccer, it's not inexpensive.
Every
But we
sport.
need every sport. Yeah, you're right. Every sport. Even rec sports are more expensive now.
Right.
So that being said, as parents, what are our expectations for our children? Hopefully, we signed our daughter up for a club soccer team to help them develop over the long term, but also potentially more quickly than they would have just playing rec soccer. You're paying for better coaching and more opportunity to play against better competition and to play with players that are better, right? So if we keep that in the forefront of our mind, and we're not paying for playing time necessarily, we're paying for development. Now, as a parent, if you feel like the lack of playing time is severely is a severe detriment to their development, then again, have that conversation, but in the form of a question. What can my son or daughter do? Because, we really want him or her to develop. And I want to make sure that's happening. Do you have any feedback for us? I think parents also need to keep in mind most of their development is actually going to happen at practice during, that's their skill development. That's when a coach really gets to hone in on tactical awareness and strategy in any one given match, depending on who the competition is and depending on the ability level whether it's an ECNL team or lower, and the team that you might be playing, but they're going to get way more touches on the ball in practice. They're going to have way more opportunity to develop and increase their skill and tactical awareness in practice than they are in a game. So don't try not to rely on minutes in games as your only barometer.
That's such an important point because a lot of travel teams, on average, they practice anywhere from 3 times a week, some on the higher end, 4 times a week. And you're right, they get that development in practice and their technical, tactical drills, and they can build their fitness in those practices as well. But I think just being real with the situation is great advice. Maybe even before you go to the coach and have a quick reaction, maybe just analyze the situation. Okay, why could my daughter be playing less? Did our team just pick up new players who might be better than her? Did she just move to a higher level team and now she has to earn her spot? So just really looking at the situation. And my mom actually, she had to get really real with me when I switched to the best travel team in the state of Maryland when I was a teenager. I moved to Bethesda Soccer Club. They won the state championships multiple years in a row. And initially, I wasn't a starter. I maybe played a half of each half, and I didn't really get discouraged about it. I just kind of knew my place. I was like, I'm new to this team. I'm coming from a lower level team and I do have to prove myself and it might take time. And my mom just kept reminding me of that too. She's like, "Look, they haven't seen you prove yourself fully yet with this level of girls and you have to earn that." And it probably took me a couple months to get into that starting lineup, but it was worth the wait. And I still really developed at the practices because, man, those practices on that higher level team were way more intense, way more productive. I was learning more about the game than I had ever before. So I think just being real with the situation and gaining that perspective helps. But if a lot of time goes on and your daughter's like working at it and she is improving and you feel like it might be an unfair situation, then yeah, ask a question and just do it in a cordial way. I think we do have to remember that coaches are humans, like you said. And if you come at it aggressively, it's going to not go well with the coach. And coaches do keep that in the back of their minds and they do label parents as the crazy parent. It just is what it is. And some hold it against their daughter and still don't play them. So, and I know it's unfair, but that's just how some coaches are. And I think we just need to be aware of that. And honestly, the reason why I'm not doing coaching is because of playing time. I don't want to have to make that decision. I'll happily stay in the gym and do the strength training side of all this. But playing time's
Yeah,
very hard for coaches, and I think it's coaches' least favorite part of the job. They hate it.
it is because it is. And honestly, it's a different story, but that's why I stopped coaching.
Yeah. That's why many
Mm.
quit.
Yeah, it's
Good
and
coaches too, Dave. Really
it's
good
too long
coaches.
of a story for this, but it was really difficult for me to take the response of a couple parents after a championship game about playing time. And I'll just say this, just because you're all, what was it?
Just yeah, you can let us
A
know.
parent complained that their child played too much and they were exhausted and upset. When in fact they were exhausted and upset because they missed a PK and we went to overtime and that meant we didn't move on. We would have won the league championship and moved on to states, but we lost in PKs and it was a great game and he was one of our best players. And yeah, I played him almost the entire game. Um, and there's a difference between playing equity and equality, right? And there's no guarantee of equal playing time. There's no guarantee that, okay, every player is going to get, you know, 25 minutes a half but equity has to deal has that's when you start to look at ability level, flow as a team. I mean, what does a coach do, especially on a higher level team, when maybe the player's faster and more skilled in any particular position, but when they're on the field with the other starting 11, things don't flow. There's so much that goes into it. And again, like when we're paying for these opportunities for our kids, it's so easy to just see what's right in front of us. They're not playing a lot. And I want to go back to when you talked about your personal story, because I think the other important thing there is you earned your playing time. Now, as parents, we're all like, well, my daughter's better. They should be in there already, or you earned it.
Mm.
What would be important for me, and what was obviously important for your mom, was how good you felt about yourself earning that spot, right? Because what if your mom, unbeknownst to you, went to the coach and just was hammering your coach all the time? So you went from not playing a lot and really not understanding why, perhaps, and then all of a sudden you are playing a lot. You don't understand why in that case either. Have you really developed? Have you developed mental toughness and grit and perseverance to keep going? Or are you just kind of like reacting to, he's either going to put me in or not? I have no idea what's going on. Right. So, what your mom did was so important for you, because I'm sure there was part of her, she's a human as well, that was like, I just want Erica to play more. I just want to be like, play my daughter more. But she sat back and she thought better about it. And you had the opportunity, she gave you the opportunity through your coach and through that team to earn your playing time.
Mhm.
And that's far more important than just complaining and getting more playing time that may or may not help you, depending on the situation. I had a situation with my oldest that was really difficult, and he was older. So he was a junior in high school, one of only like three juniors on a high level club team. And all the seniors were pretty much committed. And, we would travel to, say, from Massachusetts to Virginia for the Jefferson Cup. And his playing time, all the juniors were it was so small. And inside, I'm like, all these seniors are committed. Like, they're all set. This tournament means nothing to them. They're not trying to showcase themselves for any particular coach. So my gut reaction was, why? And so was my son's. But again, the encouragement was, go to coach, especially as a junior. Like, you need to advocate for yourself. Um, Go to coach and say, hey, what do I need to do? I really want to break in the starting lineup. I want to be able to showcase myself, because I do have some college coaches that are looking at me already. Coach, what can I do? And it had to do, like it or not, it was the formation that he loved to play, where we had one striker. It was like a 3-5-1 or 3-5-2, whatever. And he was the top, but he wasn't big enough to be a holding striker at that level. He was more of a speed. I can run through gaps. Give me a ball over the top or a through ball. I can run onto it and finish. That was one of the best parts of his game. So it was a system thing, but at least he knew, you know, and then he can internalize that and continue to be a great teammate. And here's the other, I think this might be the start of the next part of our conversation is, encourage your daughter or your son to be the best teammate that they can be, on and off the field. and you were a college recruiter,
Mm.
and I know many, they look at everything. It's not just their play on the field. If they're looking at you, they already know you're good. But what's their social look like? What kind of teammate are they? What's their behavior like at halftime, before and after the game? Those are the things that recruiters are looking at. 'Cause again, if they're looking at you, everybody they're looking at can play. And then it's like, do they have the grades to get into our school? And then what kind of person are we potentially going to recruit? So part of that encouragement is, can your son or daughter develop as a well-rounded and teammate, a supporter of that team, a champion of everyone else on that team? Can they help that team succeed by being the best practice player at that time they can be? That's also extremely important toward their development.
I love that. And I was just having a conversation with Lee Taft's daughter yesterday. We did a
Oh, cool.
podcast recording. She coaches female athletes basketball. She's amazing. But she was talking about this character component too. And I've been hearing it so much lately. While you're in that waiting period, if you're not getting a lot of playing time, you're either working on skills to earn it back while also still being that supportive bench player.
Mhm.
Because the alternative is being bitter, being jealous, being resentful. And that's only going to make you wallow in your sorrow more and take you away from also getting better and having that intrinsic motivation. And it's just a downward spiral and it's not going to end well. So I think that's so important, working on both the character aspect and your skills. And just kind of coming back to the story with my mom knew my place. She was like, Erica's on such a stud team now, but she had confidence in me because I love soccer so much. I love training on my own. I was best friends with the ball. I had a kickback goal in my front yard. She knew as my mother that I would get out there and work at it. And I think parents need to let their kids have that opportunity to take charge and work at it. And if your daughter's not getting out with the ball or the lacrosse stick or whatever, or doing her speed and strength and having that intrinsic drive, then that's a whole separate issue. That is an intrinsic motivation problem and maybe even a passion problem that she doesn't truly love the sport. And that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down, but that's a cause for concern too. That if she's not getting playing time, if she's not turning that into some empowered action, then there's a little bit of a passion problem going on. And maybe the sport was forced on her too young, or it's not her dream. And that's something to also evaluate as a parent.
Yeah, they could be burnt out. They could
Mhm.
be getting too much in of their information on what they think is success from social media and not real life. That's another podcast we could do, which you just did a great one on again. Um, yeah, there's so much that goes into that, and I was thinking about, let's like create a story, right? Let's say that you and I are on the same team. We were both starters at one point, and now we're both sitting, right? But you're choosing to be the best teammate you can, like doing all the extra things, maybe stuff you didn't even do when you were a starter. Like you're the one picking up cones, you're the one grabbing the equipment, you're the one asking coach, hey, what can I do to get better? You're the one that your coach sees staying a few minutes after, and you're doing your own conditioning because, let's face it, starters get most of the reps when you're going through set plays and stuff like that. So to stay in the best condition you can, you have to do a little bit extra sometimes when you're a bench player versus someone who's playing anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes a game, depending on how old you are. But then there's me. Excuse me. I'm just complaining. I'm bitter about it. I'm taking it out on some of our other teammates. I seem to have a lack of care for some of the drills because, in my head, I'm like, what should I try anyway? I'm not, right? Who has a better chance to become a starter again, you or myself? You, 100% of the time. Because a coach sees what you're doing, and a coach is also going to see what I'm doing or not doing. I'm not trying to earn my spot. Right? I'm not trying to develop. I'm not trying to get better. I'm not trying to take personal responsibility and accountability. I'm not trying to be the best teammate I can be. And part of a coach's job is to win games. I'm sorry, folks, but that's why we play, is to win. That's why we take score. Yes, development, especially in the earlier years, takes precedent over that. But winning games also creates more opportunity for higher level players because you're in, tournaments that have a lot more eyes on them and are more important. So there is a progression to everything. And we want to set our kids up for success, but through encouragement and, again, just being really grateful for the spot that they are in, appreciating their gifts and talents, and trying to encourage them to develop those. You and I have also done more than one blog post or podcast on life after sports too, and that's really what we're setting them up for, because it will end at some point. And these life lessons that we're so lucky to give our kids through sport can be positive or negative, and we have some control over that as parents.
Dave, I love the point that you made that at the end of the day, at least at the higher levels and the older age groups, coaches are playing to win because they want to make sure the team gets into the showcases so that they can give their players opportunities to get recruited and get seen. They're trying to win so that they can maybe keep their league status and for the soccer community to stay in the ECNL and have that badge. And I think parents also need to remember that coaches have the big picture in mind, and most of them do have good intentions, and
Mm.
they want to make sure your team keeps that good status, and especially at the older ages where you're of recruiting age. But I think it's worth mentioning playing time for the younger ages. I think this is where parents should fight back, especially for ages 12 and under, because those are the primary developmental years where young ones should be seeing the field. I believe it should be equal playing time at the younger ages. I'm sure you feel the same way because those are the most impactful years in skill acquisition and tactical development. And kids need to see the field, and they build confidence by seeing the field and changing the starting lineup and trying new positions and getting into different environments. And I think at the younger ages, it is justified if your 10-year-old is only playing 5 minutes a game. That is concerning. I would either talk to the coach or leave that team.
I couldn't agree more. And it sounds like Eric and I are kind of flipping a coin here, but we're talking about development and how to put our kids in the best situation to develop, and that changes over time. I could not agree more. When I was on board of directors for a soccer league, we started to talk about whether we had actual policy that mandated equal playing time for kids 12 and under. And I was like, but we should do that anyway. But it just wasn't happening. Some coaches would put winning for 8-year-olds above equal playing time. And let's face it, with what Erica and I specialize in, we know human development. And most 8-year-olds that really succeed on the field or the court or whatever sport they play, it's because we call them early succeeders. They move well. They move really well, and their brains are just developed to a point where they can control a soccer ball a little bit better than their peers. They can catch a lacrosse ball a little bit better. So they have a little bit more of a skill set. I've seen more often than not those 8-year-olds seemingly stop to progress when they're 14 and 15, which sometimes it looks like that, but it's just everybody else is catching up. And or they get burnt out because so much pressure is placed upon them to be that kid all the time. And they're still just an 8-year-old child who also needs to learn how to be a good teammate, which means we're going to have equal playing time. We're going to cheer on our teammates when they're out there. This has to do with development and developmental age as well as chronological age, but just trust us. From ages 12 and under, they need to play a lot to get better. As they get older, they will develop more through their practices and training sessions. And the other reason for that is the structure of, say, soccer. At younger ages, Erica knows this, they play smaller sided games. You know why we do that? So kids get to touch the ball more. If we went 11v11 for 8-year-olds, you'd have two kids on each team playing against each other for the most part, right? And every now and then one of the keepers would get to catch the ball and then, punt it or whatever. So I agree 100%. If your child is 10 and they're getting 5 minutes of playing time, that's you speak up and you're an advocate for your child. It's just like if they're not getting the services or help they need in school, you're going to be the first one to step up and send an email to the teacher and say, hey, can we meet? My son is struggling. What can we do? How can we work together to make this better? Again, the way that you do it matters. So if you just come at a youth coach or a club coach that's at the 10-year-old level and you just start, berating them and what are you doing? I've actually had this scenario happen, not to me, but I was a parent on a team for 10-year-olds. And whether it's true or not, the coach's response to this one mom was, I am so sorry. I honestly there's so many moving parts and we have so many kids on our roster. It wasn't intentional. I'm trying to play all the kids and I'm sorry so and so this game didn't play a lot. It wasn't on purpose. I will do better. Right? So again, coaches are human. So we have to take that into account. It's not I don't know very many situations, if at all, where it was on purpose. I'm just not going to play this kid just because I want to be a jerk, or because I don't like them. Coaches don't coach because they don't like certain kids. They coach because they love the game that they coach. They love kids and they really want to see them succeed.
Yeah. And I'll say there might be a rare case where a coach does that, but just keep in mind that that awful coach should not represent the rest of us who
Mm.
have good intentions. So just ask and be curious. And I just love this reminder, Dave, that it matters how you ask the question. And I'll give an example just from the speed side of things. So I had two very different moms ask the same question, but in two very different ways. And it did change my view of one of the moms. So the first mom was really pissed off about how I was running my younger one's speed sessions. She was like, this is not what I was expected. And we wanted ladders and we wanted this and we wanted that. And she came at it in a very aggressive way. Whereas mom number two was like, hey, just curious, like my daughter loves your sessions. She's having so much fun. I'm just wondering like what you work on with the speed and how some of these drills translate. And I was like, oh my gosh, like so happy to help you and educate. That's a fair question because a lot of parents just don't know how speed works for those age groups. But she came at it in a very calm and curious way, whereas mom number one was very combative and was more attacking me and raising her voice. And yes, I did feel some type of way and never viewed her the same. And
Mhm.
I hate to
You're
say it,
human.
coaches do that. Like if you are not nice to a coach, not respectful of their craft, and you don't ask them questions or place trust in them, then yeah, we're going to be totally caught off guard and we're going to think you're that crazy parent. Like it is what it is, like just being honest.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's not I'm talking about our world again in terms of sports performance. It's unless we can educate that parent number one, who's just, I want ladders, I want this. Unless we can educate them so that they can have more realistic expectations and continue to and trust in us, the fact that we know what we're doing, and that's why they hired us to begin with. We're going to give them, their son or daughter, age appropriate activities that are fun so that they stay engaged and still want to participate. And two, slowly develop them over time in terms of their overall coordination and systemic strength and all these things that go into being, faster on the field. Whereas, I don't know, that's a whole nother podcast talking about how to develop young athletes in the world of strength and conditioning. But again, it's like where most people, not just kids, are getting their information now is social media. It's not even a Google search, it's just social. And I saw a really neat Instagram post the other day. It had nothing to do with sports um, or sports performance, but it was the video. And this guy has a lot of followers, and I follow him because he makes me laugh. He's on Instagram, but it was Instagram, and then the next video clip right away would be reality. So it'd be like him looking out the window, and it was like this, like had filters on him, and he's doing like this model pose, and then he wrote reality, and he's like, and he has kids, so he's like walking up to the window to see his kids get on the bus, and he like bumps his head, and he's like, and he's like, there's a vast difference between what we see on social media in terms of how to play the game and how to prepare for the game and what is real at every level. It's 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 I don't know the word. I can't think of a good enough.
Overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and the dichotomy, they're exact opposite. They couldn't be further from each other in terms of what it takes and what we see on social media 99.9% of the time.
Mhm.
And to your point, when we were having a text conversation, Erica, it doesn't matter how many followers they have. It does not make them an expert.
No. Gosh, the longer I've been in the online space, the more I realize that a following doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that person's more qualified, that person has a good business, that person's wealthy. Like, I mean, it means nothing because most people have fake followers or they just rely on that fame and the likes, and they're not really mastering their craft. They're just chasing the following. So that's a whole separate podcast. I'm actually going to link the blog I wrote on social media and just the toxic culture of influencers and why sports parents and female athletes need to beware. So check that out. Dave, I do want to mention one more thing if you have like 5 minutes.
Oh, of course. Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. I think the equal playing time, at least before ages 12 to 13, before the growth spurt and before girls actually specialize, I think that is key young because it allows kids to have that enjoyment for sport and to develop that passion, because how can a kid develop that pure joy if they're on the bench? They're so young and they're going to think they're a failure. But if they
Mhm.
have a coach that believes in them young, that gets them that playing time so that they can really develop their skills in those malleable years, they're going to have that passion through high school when the stakes become higher and they have to fight for playing time.
Mhm.
When they're 15, 16, and maybe they lose that playing time, at least they still have that innate passion that they got young to get through that time. That is so key. So parents need to really look at, is my under 12 on a team where there is equal playing time? And there's a lot of researchers in the youth space. I'm having Dr. Amanda Stanek on, who has her PhD in this, but she just wrote a book called Protect the Joy. And she also says that based on the science, young ones need equal playing time because it helps with motivation. So
Mhm.
stay tuned for her episode. It's going to be fantastic. But this is all science based. This is not just our random opinion.
I love that you anchored that down. Um, I just can't emphasize it enough. One of the things I fought really hard for, um, as my kids were growing up was to continue, like we were, pretty much a soccer family, was for our league to continue to stay in town for our younger age groups in the fall. In Massachusetts, spring soccer is where you would play other towns and you would try to win your little league. And if you win that, you could move on to like a state tournament where you're guaranteed 3 games, and it's a point system. And then there's semifinalists and finalists, and it's just super fun, right? But there's a competitive season, and in the fall, I fought tooth and nail to make sure in the fall we were playing small-sided games. We had random draws of all the kids in our league per age group so the kids could play with their friends and against their friends. And the biggest job for us, it was a rec league, for the rec coaches, was just sub equally. Like, let these kids, just continue to play and get their touch on and sub often. And I was actually an advocate, even though it was outdoor. Let's just sub on the fly. Like, that way you're not waiting for a goal kick or throwing for your team. Like, just sub, just get the kids playing time. And the other part of that was when the participation rate was the highest in our local town. As soon as um, we had kind of a new regime come in terms of our executive board, and they thought, no, we're competing with club soccer, we have to have competitive teams, and we want to travel in the fall and in the spring. Over the years, participation has gone down, and the level of play arguably did not get any better. It got worse, without any matrix to fall back on, because I wasn't about to study it. I just knew what was going to happen. It wasn't as fun. Kids want to, when they're young, they want to play with and against their friends. And we didn't even hire refs in the fall. We like kind of coach refed and just, again, sub on the fly and let them play. It was like recess soccer in a way. And then we'd have our one practice a week where we'd actually work on skill development, and all was good. But I'm just talking soccer. It's morphed into, no, we always have to compete. We always have to, and it's about developing the kids, what puts them in the most opportune position to develop. And we're not always going to hit a bullseye every time, but if we keep at it, can we get closer to the bullseye the more we coach and the more we direct what happens in our leagues and in our clubs and that sort of thing. So, um, I mean, this is just so layered. I think if we, to circle back around, what do we do as parents and as kids when playing time goes down? Encourage, be enthusiastic, just just push them to self-advocate depending on their age. And I think Erica said it the best: take a step back before you just react and really analyze what's going on. And put your best foot forward, because the coaches are trying to do that as well for the most part. I mean, every industry has bad eggs and there's always one, but let's be real. The coaches are coaching because they love the game, they love the kids, and they want to help them.
Dave, this has been awesome. And I always love having you on because you provide such a great perspective as a former soccer coach and now performance coach. You're also a dad to two soccer players. So you have such a great outlook on all of this. And I really think everyone listening will take this advice to heart. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, leave a comment. I'll leave Dave's Instagram in the caption below so you can follow up and ask questions if you need. But thank you again for listening, everyone. And I will see you on the next episode.